So it finally happened. Bronny James is in the NBA to play with his son. He was selected 55th overall by the LA Lakers on day 2 of the NBA draft yesterday. And after months and months of speculation, would a team take him in the first round? Would the Lakers take him at 17? Do the Suns think they have a realistic chance at drafting him at 22 and convincing LeBron to sign with them? Would a team try to jump the Lakers in the second round? None of that happened. Bronny ended up going 55. And honestly, it's a pretty feel-good story. Like, I know you're going to say your things about nepotism, and it is true. It is nepotism. But how crazy it is. We all have to admit, or can admit, how crazy it is that LeBron James is playing with his son in the NBA. And it's not like he's on his Vince Carter retirement tour, right? It's not like he's somebody that's the end of the bench guy, making 7 minutes a night. He's still a top 20 player in the NBA. You can make a convincing argument to me that he's still a top 10 player in the NBA, and his son is going to be on the same team as him. That is just absolute insanity. I see these pictures of LeBron in his early days in Cleveland holding up Bronny, and they are teammates. They are teammates. Wrap your head around that. That is just insanity. That is something we may never see in a Big Four professional sport again, in the way that LeBron is an elite player. And I don't know if they're ever going to play a game with each other this year. Bronny should not be in this Lakers rotation if they have serious goals about winning a championship. He should spend time in the G League. Maybe he's going to be the 11th man, the 12th man. That's probably what they should do, because right now you have LeBron, AD, Austin Reeves pretty much under contract next year. You'd assume Max Christie, being a restricted free agent, is going to be back into the fold. You'd assume Jalen Hood-Schifino and Dalton Connect, who we'll get to in a little bit, are going to be getting minutes next year. Jalen Hood-Schifino, their first round pick last year. Dalton Connect, their first round pick this year. Rui Hachimura should be getting minutes as well. D'Angelo Russell is a free agent, and I think what's big for the Lakers, they should do a sign and trade with D'Angelo Russell just to get something back for him. It would kind of stink if he just left for nothing, because that's like 18, 20 points a night that you have to replace. The amount of money Gabe Vincent's being paid as well, he's going to be in the rotation, which I feel like Bronny, by year 5, year 6, could maybe be what Gabe Vincent is today. So that's why I don't think we're going to see Bronny next year unless there's a lot of injuries to the Lakers roster, because they kind of have that smaller guard that can hopefully knock down some threes, but really lock in on the defensive end on the point of attack. And that's pretty much what Gabe Vincent is. Maybe Taurean Prince comes back. Maybe Cam Reddish comes back. I know Lakers fans and the Lakers are probably trying to add a big third name this offseason. I don't think they have the assets to get a Donovan Mitchell or a Trae Young. So you're looking at like your DeJounte Murrays of the world. I think if there's apparently a low cost out there for Brandon Ingram, they should definitely think about that. But yeah, I still find it crazy that Bronny ended up going in the draft, man. It's funny because all that stuff that came out that teams would take him, I guess, were just never true. And it's funny too, because during the draft, Bob Myers of ESPN on their broadcast said that Rich Paul, he heard from him that he is telling teams, do not draft Bronny. And if you do, Bronny is playing in Australia next year. I'm like, all right, dude, you're not doing the kid any favors by saying that. Like, come on. What are we doing with that? But yeah, Bronny goes 55th in the 2024 NBA draft. ESPN and like the NBA, I think, are very lucky because they couldn't stop talking about Bronny on day 2. They even talked about him a ton on day 1. And if they plan on doing the draft 2 days going forward, I can't imagine how bad the ratings will be next year if there's a second round. If there's not a player's son on the statue of, and if there's not a player's son on like the popularity level of LeBron James in it, right? So I don't know if they would ever think about doing the lottery on night 1, and then you could do the end of the lottery in round 2 on day 2. That could be something, but then everyone's just like, just go back to one day, right? Just go back to one day and do it. So the draft was really fun. I live streamed it over on the Straws channel. I had a great time. I think you guys did as well. We had over 8,000 people in the stream at one point. It went great, and I kind of want to give some thoughts on my favorite picks, or at least my most interesting picks in the draft. So some of my least favorite picks as well. So yeah, Zachary Visachet ended up going number 1 overall, probably the least talked about number 1 overall pick in quite some time. I hope he works out. He seems like a good kid, but for Atlanta, you're really drafting him to be a role player in the first couple years of his career, at least if you're keeping DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. They did trade away AJ Griffin to free up some minutes, but yeah, I think at his peak this year, Visachet could shoot 37% from 3, play fine off-ball defense. I think he's going to struggle at creating separation, finishing at the rim, but he hopefully goes through those growing pains and can turn into a nice player in the league for quite some time. I mean, the Washington Wizards had a very eventful 2024 draft. A couple hours before the draft, they traded away Deni Avdija to the Portland Trailblazers, which was kind of head-scratching when it happened, but then when you kind of break it down and you think about it, Deni's under contract for 4 more years. It's a fantastic contract. It is one of the best contracts in the NBA, but at the end of that contract, Denny may want $30 million a year, right? And the Wizards are going to be coming out of their rebuild, and maybe they're never going to really pay him that much money. And maybe they think that right now with Denny having 4 years left on his deal at $11 million, and it's descending over time, so it'll be like $11.8 million in 2027, this is going to be the peak of his value. Every year that he plays for the Wizards and maybe doesn't improve each much as you would think each year, his value is going to go down. So maybe they thought this would be the peak of his value. So I could see where they're coming from. I would have loved to see some Bilal, Denny, Sarr lineups, but I guess we're never going to see that. But yeah, for Washington, I loved most of their draft picks. Alex Sarr was my top guy in this draft, and they got him at number 2. That is fantastic. I'm excited to see him in Washington, D.C. Bub Carrington at 14, the pick that they got in the Denny Avdija trade. I'm a huge Bub fan. He didn't really start playing point guard until his freshman year last year at Pittsburgh. One of the younger players in this draft, has a smooth-looking pull-up jumper, can get his teammates involved, and has great size and speed. I'm really excited to see how he does in his rookie season. And then they got Keyshawn George at 24. They traded up a couple picks with the New York Knicks. Fine 3-and-D prospect, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time to get acclimated to the NBA game. To talk about Portland, they ended up moving on the 14th overall pick in that Denny trade. Gave away Malcolm Brogdon as well, who I'm sure Washington wants to flip for a first-round pick. And I'm really excited about Denny Avdija in Portland, like Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, Denny Avdija, and Donovan Clingan, who they just drafted. That is a really interesting core going forward, and I think Denny and Clingan could complement each other. Now they could think about moving Anthony Simons this offseason, maybe do what Washington just did and hope you could trade Simons at the peak of his value. They also have other tradable veterans after moving on from Brogdon, like Jeremy Grant, DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams. So I think those guys could get moved over the next 1 to 2 years as well. And it's an exciting future for Portland. Thank God they did this, right? And they didn't try to keep competing with Damian Lillard as like the 6th seed every year. San Antonio had an interesting draft night. They got Stephon Castle at 4. Big fan of that. He can play defense. He can play off ball to Victor Wembanyama. But then they traded the 8th overall pick for a 2030 pick swap and a 2031 first round pick. Rob Dillingham goes to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Hell yeah. I love that so much for Minnesota. Rob is a microwave scorer and can complement Anthony Edwards for years to come in the post-Mike Conley era. I was surprised when the Lakers got Dalton Connect at 17, and it was a phenomenal pick. I had him 9th in my mock draft to the Charlotte Hornets in a trade down. He was 9 or 10 on my big board going into the draft, and they got him at 17. He should be able to help them right away as they're trying to just do something in one of LeBron's final years. What is Milwaukee doing? I hated the AJ Johnson pick, and I know a lot of people are clowning them on Twitter, and I don't want to keep dunking on AJ Johnson, but I don't know. I just really wasn't a fan of this pick because over the last couple of years, Milwaukee has not done a great job developing their prospects. They haven't really done that in Marjon Beauchamp. It's been kind of disappointing since he came out of the G League Ignite, and Andre Jackson showed great promise in the first couple of games of his rookie season when he came out of UConn last year, and then they just fumbled his development. Either it was Adrian Griffin, either it was Doc Rivers. I feel like they did not prioritize the young guys because they're trying to win right now with some of those veterans, which is fine, but why draft arguably the biggest project in the 2024 NBA draft in AJ Johnson? He averaged 2 points in the National Basketball League last year over in Australia and New Zealand, and I just didn't really get this whatsoever. He was a top high school guy. He was like the 47th ranked prospect in ESPN's top 100. Could have went to Texas, opted to play international ball, and he's somebody that I think is like a 3 to 4 to maybe even 5-year project player in this league. I don't really get that. There were so many other NBA ready talent on the board that you could have taken. Boston, your rival in the East, took Baylor Shireman, and I love that pick, and he would have been perfect in Milwaukee to replace Pat Connaughton. So I don't know what they were doing right there. Or maybe you just didn't really like Andre Jackson's defense, which I don't know how you don't. So why didn't you take Ryan Dunn, who was on the board, the best defender in this class, and him and Giannis in the front court together could have been nasty defensively. Or Terrence Shannon Jr., who went to Minnesota at 27, didn't really get that whatsoever for Milwaukee. But yeah, shout out to Minnesota getting Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. in this draft. Big fan of both those picks. I think Minnesota did a great job, and they're going to be contending for an NBA title next year. I actually going to give my Knicks some props too. I was like, what are you doing on night one? Getting Bakome Diop, but I'm like, all right, maybe a draft and stash. They don't have to pay his contract. They got to worry about being near the second apron and being hard capped, but I think he's going to play. And in the second round, the Knicks did like 18 different trades. They ended up with some future second round picks because they traded one of their first on night one to OKC, ended up being Dylan Jones for 5 seconds. Then they shuffled those seconds around. So they have a couple future seconds. They got some cash, and they ended up with 2 guys I had also in the first round, late in the second. So they got Kevin McCullough late in the second, and they got Tyler Kolek early in the second. And I love those 2 picks. Tyler Kolek can orchestrate this offense, be the lead initiator, slow the game down when Brunson is off the floor. And Kevin McCullough is a pretty good scoring wing that could create his own shot off the bench. I thought those were absolute steals for the Knicks, so I thought they did a great job. And then lastly, the Utah Jazz Jazz, I thought did a great job for getting value in this draft. Cody Williams at 10, I thought was a fine pick, pretty much the range where I thought he can go and has extremely high upside. And then they got Isaiah Collier, my number 9 ranked prospect at 29, an absolute steal. I have no idea how Isaiah Collier fell to 29. I think that's just like teams overthinking it. I think he's going to be a really good guard in this league. And I think in Utah could be a perfect fit for him to fully develop, get his shots, get his reps. And I'm really excited to see him there in Utah. And they also got Kyle Filipowski at 32 as well. Another guy that could have went in the first round. And that whole Kyle Filipowski situation that's looking like it's true is really weird. How he was kind of like groomed when he was younger by a Mormon, and he doesn't talk to his family anymore. And it was his former babysitter. She went to his high school prom and she's 7 years older than him. It's so weird. And of course, like, she's Mormon. He goes to Utah. Like, of course, right? And I don't want to speculate anymore on it, but it has to be one of the more odd situations coming out of draft night in recent memory. So yeah, that is gonna be it for me. Hope you guys did enjoy this video. Just wanted to talk about the 2024 NBA draft and how kind of crazy it is that LeBron's gonna be playing with his son next year. The memes are gonna be unmatched with Bronny and JJ Redick on the Lakers next year with LeBron. It's gonna be quite the show.